السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إن الحمد لله وحده الصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وبعد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. All praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and his countless blessings be upon Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Today our topic is whether it is permissible to build the new graves over the old graves. And besides this, we shall be also talking about whether it is permissible to remove the dead body from one place to other place. So these are the two important discussions we're going to discuss, inshallah, in our today's session. So actually, we have discussed at length the concept of burial in Islam. And this is one of the finest and one of the natural ways to dispose of the dead bodies. And when Sayyidina Habil rahimahullah ta'ala was killed by Qabil, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught Qabil, or how Qabil learned from the crow how to bury the body. So this burial is actually the best way to dispose of the deceased. However, as we know that there are two parts of qabr. There are two parts of the grave. One is a physical, one is physical and see visible. Second one is invisible part. Invisible part is that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam qabr is either rawdatun min riyad al-jannah or hufratun min hufarat an-nar. Either it is one of the gardens of the paradise or one of the ditches of the hellfire. But that part is not visible to the human eye. We are not able to have that access because that is directly linked to Alam al-Barzakh. Alam al-Barzakh is a stage that comes after the death of a person. But that is altogether invisible to us. Human capability is not able to, there's no any human ability or capability to have access to that particular part of invisibility, or that is invisible world, which is not accessible to us. Then is the physical part, a visible part, which we can see. That is when we bury a particular person in the grave after some time, as a cause of, due to the causes of natural laws. So body is bound to perish. Body is bound to decompose. So this decomposes, and the ingredients of the body are altogether absorbed into the soil. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم منها خلقناكم. It is from this soil we created you. وفيها نعيدكم. And it is to this soil we're going to return you to back. And ومنها نخرجكم تارة أخرى. It is from this soil we shall revive you again, resurrect you again. So this is the fate of all Muslims and the Christians and the Jews who bury the dead bodies. There are other traditions also who do not bury, like the Hindus, they burn the dead bodies. Or some of the Buddhists also do the same practice. And then among the Buddhists, there are multiple practices regarding what they do to the dead bodies. In some traditions, they throw the dead bodies on the peaks of the mountains where vultures and other birds come, and they altogether eat up the flesh of the dead bodies. So there are many traditions this, but as I said before, the best way to deal with the dead bodies and the natural way of dealing with this to bury it. Now the question arises that regarding the visible part of the grave, that is when dead body is buried in the grave, and then after some time, we know that it is decomposed in the decomposed in the grave, and then the human body, which was long before one of the robust, beautiful, strong body, now it's altogether vanishes into the soil. It is all absorbed into the soil. And that is actually the fate of each and every one. We are going to face it, except the bodies of prophets. There's authentic hadithun sahih, in which Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded the soil not to eat up the bodies of the prophets. So other than the prophets, yes, we are prone to this decomposition, and we have to go through this rottenness. The bodies are rotten, and there's no any denying the fact about it. Now the question is that if, as we know that specifically the issue occurs in the urban areas where we have the shortage of the piece of land where we can bury the Muslims. We have the graveyards, but because of the growing population and growing cities, the cities are now turned into the concrete jungles. The question here arises that is it permissible to build new graves over the old one? So what is the hukum? Since in each and every aspect of life, in all the events, we need to see what Sharia offers us to do. We cannot think of our own, rather we have to think through the prism and framework of Sharia. Now the question arises, okay, even if we have ample land, then is it permissible that we can build the new graves over the old ones? Or if we have the short of land, there's a shortage of land in a particular region, and then is it permissible that we can reuse the graveyard again and again by building the new graves over the old ones? Now we will see what the Sharia says about it. And there's a kind of agreement among the scholars that a place where a Muslim is buried should not be disturbed if flesh, bones, or other parts of the body remain there. There is almost a kind of consensus and a kind of agreement upon this issue, that as long as the human flesh, the human bones, or any part of the body remains there, it's not permissible. It's not advisable that it should be exhumed. The dead body should be relocated. If any of his other remains are found, it is not permissible to disturb them. As I have discussed this multiple times, that humans command honor, dignity, and reverence even after the death. Takreem ibn Adam. Takreem ibn Adam means reverence of human existence, human being. It's not only applicable until the death of a person, rather, this reverence, dignity, and honor has to be observed even after the death of a person. So one of the ways to offer our reverence and dignity, to hold the dignity of the human being, is that if there are certain remains still there, so it is not permissible that it should be altered. The grave needs to be covered up, it should not be altered. But if the entire corpse, entire body has disintegrated into dust, it has completely decomposed. Now there doesn't remain neither any flesh or the bones or any part of the body. And then ulama agree that yes, in such a condition, it means that now what appeared to be a qabr, a grave before, doesn't seem to be any more grave, because grave is actually the house of the dead body. And now the dead body, the content itself, is altogether missing. So they agree that if such is the condition, that the dead body has fully decomposed into the grave, and then neither the flesh nor the bones or any part of the body is intact, and it is all vanished, it is all absorbed and disintegrated into the soil, then a new grave may be dug over there. And also, in such a case, it is permissible to use the land for planting, cultivation, or building. So this is one of the opinion. However, some fuqaha or some schools of law, they have put certain conditions for this, that there should be a huge time period that the dead bodies were not buried in that particular piece of land. And once people are quite sure about it, that now there's no any trace of the dead bodies found, they're all together decomposed and disintegrated into the soil, then in that condition, it can be reused for cultivation or planting or building and for other beneficial purposes. So it means that here we can find out a kind of disagreement with respect to the land which is specified for the mosque, for the masjid. because all the fuqaha agree that wherever a masjid or a mosque is constructed, now this piece of land cannot be used for any other purpose. So it is until the last day to come, it has to be only for the purpose of masjid. So this ruling is not for the graveyard, a place or a piece of land which is used for the burial of the Muslims. So it means if there elapsed a good amount of time in which there was no dead body buried into the graveyard, and the people are quite sure about the previous dead bodies which were buried before a long period of time, and then due to this lapse of time, they are sure about that the dead bodies have altogether disintegrated, they have altogether been decomposed, and now even if the graves are dug out, nothing can be traced back, nothing can be found in terms of bones, flesh, or any organ of the body. So in such a case, then they say this land can be used, reutilized for other purposes, and which is beneficial purposes. And if the remains of a body, such as bones, are found during the digging, then the digging should be stopped. So it means that, as I said before, the principle of reverence of dead bodies, takrimul mayyit even, the principle of reverence, showing our reverence to the dead bodies, it is still there. So Fuqaha mentioned that if during the digging process, they find out the other bones which are still intact, then the digging process, it should be altogether stopped. And if the remains are found after the digging is finished, then it's quite permissible to place these to one side in the grave and bury another body inside them. Bury another body beside them. In that way, we can simply say that, yes, if the previous dead body is altogether decomposed, then the same cover can be used for the burial of other person. However, if the deceased person was buried before a funeral prayer was offered for him or her, and the person had not been covered with soil, then the remains should be removed and the funeral prayer should be offered before reburial. There's quite possibility that sometimes that people they bury the dead body without offering the funeral prayer. But if the burial has not completed, has not been taken to its logical end, and then it is permissible that we can say there is a partial exhumation of the dead body. It can be taken out of the grave, and then funeral prayer or janaza should be offered to him, and then he can be reburied. But if the deceased was buried completely without a funeral prayer, the burial process had altogether been completed, then it is unlawful, according to Hanafi and Shafi school, to dig up the grave. In such a case, this will be altogether a kind of disrespect to the dead body. So people should not do this. In such a case, funeral prayer should be offered for the deceased without disturbing the grave. So there is no need to take the dead body out first, because for janaza, it's not necessary that the body should be visible in front of us, according to Jamhur. And there's also another report from Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala, which says that in such a case, the grave should be dug up, the body exhumed, and a funeral prayer offered for the deceased person. So we can say there's a kind of difference of opinion among the fuqaha. The leaders of the three schools, that is Shafi'i, Maliki, and Hanbali fuqaha, the Aimma, or the pioneers of these three schools, hold it permissible to dig up a grave for a valid reason. In the beginning, we have discussed that to uphold and to maintain the sanctity of the dead person or deceased is that once it is buried properly, it should not be dug out. It should not be uncovered. However, the Aimma, or the Imams of the three schools, that is Hanbali, Shafi, and Maliki schools, they say that if digging is required for a specific or valid reason, for example, while the body was laid, it was laid in the grave, someone's wallet fell and there was a huge amount of money in the wallet, and now that has also been buried. What about that amount of money? Should we leave it there, or it is permissible to uncover the grave and then get that particular amount of money back and then cover it again? Or this is this is one of the multiple reasons that the people who laid the dead body in the grave, they later on realized that the face of the dead body was not towards Qibla, which is actually one of the basic requirements when we bury the dead bodies. They need to just face towards a Qibla. So is it permissible now to exhume, or we can say uncover the grave and turn the face of the body of the deceased towards the Qibla? It is, yes, it is a valid reason. Or the person was buried without a proper wash, without a proper ghusl, and without proper purification, or to improve the shroud. So these are the reasons that fuqaha say that uh, it is these are valid reasons, then it is permissible that redo this. However, in cases when it is feared that by doing so the corpse will disintegrate, they also agree that it is not permissible. So we can say that this ruling may apply maybe for a specific short span of time after the burial of a person. So if a person has been freshly buried in the grave, so maybe this ruling apply. However, if there elapses a good amount of time, and then we are sure, or we are almost clear about it, sure about it, that the dead body might have disintegrated, then in such a case, it is not permissible. Almost all the fuqaha agree that if the people fear about the disintegration of the body or the decomposition of the body, then it's not permissible to uncover or to open up the grave. However, the Hanafi school disagrees. They uh, they consider it impermissible. Hanafi school considers it not permissible to dig up a grave for any of the above reason. They consider such digging of a grave as a sort of dismembering of the body. Dismembering of the body refers to muthla. Muthla is also another translation of muthla is mutilation. So, uh, which is not permissible in any case. Imam Ibn Qaddam al-Hanbali rahimahullah ta'ala, he counters this position by explaining that it should be considered dismemberment or musla only in the case of those whose bodies have rotten away. In such a case, a grave should not be dug up. As I said before, there is consensus of scholars. If they feel that, if they realize that the body has been decomposed, then it is not permissible to open up the grave. But if it is a fresh burial, as I said before, then for three schools, it is permissible that we can open up the grave for a valid reason. And if the deceased was buried without a shroud, then there are two alternatives. First, he should be left alone, since the object of having a shroud is to cover the body, and that has been achieved by covering it with soil. Therefore, just for the purpose of putting the shroud on the dead body, the grave should not be uncovered. It's not permissible to dig out the grave just for the purpose of shroud. And second opinion is the grave should be dug up and the body shrouded, because shrouding is an obligatory act, and it is as important as washing the body. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, if the grave digger forgot and left his tool inside the grave, and he may dug them up. The same applies if someone dropped an axe, or someone money, or someone of something value. He was asked about it. What if the deceased's family offered the owner of the object's compensation for his lost valuables? He said, if they give him his rightful due, then he may not dig. Actually, here applies the principles of milkiya. Principle of milkiya is right to ownership and right to proprietorship. If a person's money fell into the grave and he is the rightful owner of the money, or the grave digger who digs out the graves, and he used many tools for this, and he forgot a tool inside the grave, and actually this is one of the basic tools that he can earn his bread, he can earn the money for his family, he can just in order to support his family. It is all permissible according to Imam Ahmad rahimahullah to reopen the grave so that a person can retrieve his object, and then it can be altogether covered. However, when he was asked about if the deceased family, they say we don't allow the grave to be opened up, rather we may compensate on his behalf, whatever has been left there, we may give it to you. Imam Ahmad said, rahimahullah ta'ala, in such a case, it is all permissible. Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah ta'ala, has reported a relevant hadith concerning this issue on the authority of Sayyidina Jabir, radiallahu anhu, that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam came to Abdullah ibn Ubay. Abdullah ibn Ubay was Ra'isul Munafiqeen, the chief of hypocrites. When he died, so Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he came to him, and after he was lowered in his grave, he commanded his companions to take him out. So dead body was already laid in the grave. Then Prophet came sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he commanded the Sahaba to take out the dead body, and they took him out. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam put him on his knees, on his blessed knees, blew his saliva over him, then put a shirt on him. Prophet's his own shirt, he put it on the body of Abdullah ibn Ubay. He has also reported, Sayyidina Jabir radiallahu anhu, a man was buried with my father. I did not feel good until I removed him and buried him in a separate grave. So Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah has given these two hadiths in a separate chapter entitled, Can a deceased be taken out of the grave for any reason? Imam Abu Dawood reported from Abdullah ibn Amr, who said, radiallahu anhu, while we were going to At-Ta'if and passing by a grave, I heard Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, this is Abu Raghal's grave. Abu Raghal was known for his treachery in the whole Arabian Peninsula. And even there was also a custom among the Arabs, after performing the Hajj, they would go to the grave of Abu Raghal and they would stone his grave. So actually his character had turned into a kind of symbol of treachery, dishonesty, and corruption, Abu Raghal. And there is also a saying that when Abraha, the Yemenite king, the king of Yemen, when he wanted to demolish Kaaba, actually, when he saw that people travel long distances from Yemen to Kaaba to make tawaf of Kaabatullah. So he thought, we can say in our modern day international relation discipline language, so he may thought it altogether opposite to his national interests, that people live in Yemen, but their loyalty is in Kaaba, in Makkah. So he wanted to build a Kaaba, a building similar to that of Kaaba, and he wanted people to make tawaf of it and not to cover the long distances. One of the Arabian Bedouin, he went there and he spoiled it all, and this enraged Abraha. So he wanted to demolish Kaaba, but he didn't knew the road proper path to Kaaba. It's mentioned that Abu Raghal was a person who, on behalf of certain amount of money, promised him to show the proper place and proper way to Kaaba. So Abu Raghal was a quite notorious character in the Arabian tradition. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is mentioned that Imam Abu Dawud mentions that Abdullah bin Amr radiallahu anhu, who said, while we were going to At-Ta'if and passing by a grave, I heard Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, this is Abu Raghal's grave. He used to treat the Prophet insolently in the sacred precincts of the sacred mosque. The Prophet ﷺ added, when he left, a retribution overtook Abu Raghal, as it did his people at this place. So he was buried here. And the proof of this is that he was buried with a piece of gold. So if you dig up his grave, you will get it. The people rushed to the grave, dug it up, and found and removed the gold piece over there. Imam al-Khattabi rahimahullah, based on this hadith, Imam al-Khattabi is one of the famous scholars. Based on this hadith, he says that the hadith shows that it is permissible to dig up the graves of polytheists if there is some good or benefit for Muslims in doing so. Indeed, in such a situation, their case is not similar to that of a deceased Muslim. So Imam al-Khattabi makes a distinction here on the basis of this hadith, that if there is a quite beneficial for the Muslims to uncover or dig up the grave of a kafir or of a polytheist. It is permissible. But same thing doesn't apply to the grave of a Muslim. However, three groups of scholars, as I said, three schools of law, Shafi, Maliki, and Hanbali, they say if there is a valid reason to dig up the grave, then it is permissible, and then they are allowed to do this. But there's a condition again that there should be sure that dead body is unaltered. The deceased is unaltered, so it means that it is applicable for quite a short period of time after the fresh burial of a person. So these were some of the rulings concerning whether it is permissible to build the graves over the new graves over the old one. So inshallah, in our next session, we also talk about another important discussion, that is, are we allowed to remove the dead body from one place to other place? So we can say translocation of the dead bodies. Is it permissible? If yes, how far? If not, then what is the reason for this? We're going to deal with this, inshallah, important discussion in our upcoming session. So far, if there is any question with anyone, you can ask, please. Okay, Jazakumullah ta'ala khairah. See you, inshallah, in our next session. Subhanallah bihamdihi, subhanakallahu bihamdik. أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون السلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.